Hello, everyone. Jeff Tefertiller, my son Reese. We're doing a short series of just getting to know some of the people in the fantasy community, and we have Ryan McDowell with us. Ryan, how's it going?
It's going well, guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right. So people don't know this, and even in our Twitter conversation, that the Tefertillers and the McDowells have a family friendship. Is that fair, Ryan?
Yes. Going back a ways.
Going back to how many years ago was it that we took a dual family vacation to Disney? Reese says 8.
I was 6.
Wow. He's 14
Yeah,
now.
he knows better than I do. It has been a while, but yeah, we've done Disney, we've done St. Louis, Nashville,
yeah,
Oklahoma
City, and Louisville.
Yeah.
And so we have stories. So anyway, there's a lot of friendship. So let's go through this. So it's been 8 years since then, you said. Did I remember correctly that 8 years ago you started at DLF? You recently had your anniversary, work-anniversary, whatever it is?
Yeah, that's right. It's funny, a friend of mine that I used to teach with actually got married on the same day that I started at DLF. So that's really how I end up remembering that date every year, that I'll see her or she'll say something about her anniversary. And I know when she's celebrating 8, I'm celebrating 8. Not quite as important as hers, but yeah, that's how I keep up with it each year. But yeah, it's been 8 years at DLF.
Wow. You know, I was thinking back in my home office, you've been here. I have some of the original things that were in print from 2007. And I think, man, that's been a long time.
Yeah.
A long time. All right. So how'd you get started at DLF? How did they recruit you, or how'd that all go down?
Sure. So, well, Jeff, you kind of know part of this story, that I was always kind of one of the most active members of my fantasy leagues. Was really active on the Football Guys message board. And that's both of those really are how I got to know you and built a friendship through fantasy football. And then I guess really things changed for me when Twitter became really popular. I remember both of us having a conversation about that. Like, we both kind of joined Twitter at the same time, and we're trying to figure out exactly what it was and how to use it and how to make ourselves better fantasy players because of that. And so it really just took off for me again, just like the other avenues. I was very active on there, and eventually after probably after a year, or maybe a little bit more than that, Eric Dickens from over at DLF just sent me a message and basically asked me if I was interested in coming on. And at that point, you know, that was kind of early for DLF as well. They had been going for a while, but it had been a slow build. We have premium subscriptions and things like that over there now, and have had for a while. But at that point, they didn't. So I was one of the first writers there in that group, beyond the ownership, the partner group, and been there ever since. So it's been a good journey with those guys.
Oh my! And let me go way back in my memory. You just brought up the Football Guys message board. Of course, I was wannabe. That's the team. That's even my fantasy league team still, right? And it has this young lad's picture when he was like 2 or 3, right? With the 1.5 with the popsicle. But so yours was Jeter. Is that your Football Guys message board?
Yep. Jeter 23. So I'm a big Yankees fan. Actually, I got the hat on today here. That was my my username over there, and still is actually. I still check out the Shark Pool every once in a while. Good smart guys still posting and sharing their thoughts there.
Oh, there's a lot of people that went through there. I mean, I remember Chris Wessling was Fear and Loathing.
Yep.
I remember a lot of those people that came through there, and I will confess I haven't been on there years. And,
oh, really? Wow. Yeah.
I check out Twitter a few times a day, depending on what's going on. It's like the rest of us. and don't watch too much TV other than football. He and I catch games, back in the old time games. And, anyway, what games are playing this weekend?
Tomorrow is at 3 o'clock on CBS. It's the AFC Championship game from 2018-2019. And on Sunday at 3 o'clock on Fox, my beloved Broncos take down the Falcons in Super Bowl 33.
You got to have one or two victories in there just to help you wear the orange, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So those that don't know the young lad, he follows football very closely. You agree with that, Ryan?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
The young lad does. And so, in fact, my Barry jersey behind me, because I'm a big Barry Sanders fan, is the only one I have. And Reese has like three
framed.
Von Miller.
Maurice Jones-Drew, and that one shirt.
Yeah, the one with like Demarius and a bunch from camp. So anyway, how many leagues do you play in, and how many do you commish? Do you want your wife to know this answer?
Yeah,
you want Aaron to know this answer?
I'm glad she's not in here right now. No, she actually helps me from time to time getting all the leagues together. But I've cut back in how many I commish. I think I'm down to 10. Which is still a pretty big number for most people. So
is that just the 5 KSs and the 5 HAs?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's it. I help out in hundreds of leagues actually with Scott Fish, but we won't count those. And then I've actually been joining a few more lately. Every off season I say I'm not going to join any. I'm cutting back, and I've been joining more and more. The quarantine is taking its effect for sure.
Yeah, wait till it's line up at waiver time, then you'll really be thankful, won't you? When the waiver's set, you're like trying to remember who's on what team. I don't have near as many leagues as you. Like I'm in 9 of those 10, and I'm in the Fishbowl, and I'm in one with him. Father-son church league, and I think I do fairly well. But that McDowell guy is always. Beats by Gray is always at the top of he and I, people that don't know this, other than, so 8 of those 9, you and I are on opposite sides of the conference, all except for KS1. And
yep.
So I'm on one side, and I usually look who's doing well on the other. It's usually Bucketheads or Beats by Gray, your 2 team names, and you do well. I was looking back at my leagues last year. I thought I did well, but then I was like, those times where you're just like, what, so close? Because I'm in those 10 leagues, made the playoffs in 8, and then the 2 I didn't make are probably 2 of my better teams. It just didn't work out, KS3 and KS5. And then I made the finals in 5 of those 10 and only won 1. This stinker beat me in the father-son league.
Yeah, it's really, chasing titles is, that's what it's all about, but that's also the hardest part because those 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever the playoffs is or might be in your league, that's there's a lot of luck and timing that come in to play with that. So it's hard to win a championship.
Oh yeah, but making the finals in 4 out of those 9 and the KSHAs, I was so jazzed.
Yeah.
And to only win 1, I was like, oh. How many of those 10 did you final and win?
Oh wow, I don't even remember.
You beat me in one of them.
I was gonna say I think I won one of the HAs. I know. I don't think I won a kitchen sink league this year, and in fact, I think I made one final and did not win. So I'm not sure. I'm terrible about keeping up with it, honestly.
Me either. I just want to be plus money. You're right. Ryan knows this. I'm plus money. I pay 2 years in advance, so I never have to worry about it. It can always be fun. And I just don't – fantasy football to me is fun. I don't want to worry about money,
Yeah.
And so anyway. So let's get into some discussion. I always enjoy hearkening back to the good old days, but, time's moving fast, right?
That's right.
All right. Let's look at some recent news. What are your thoughts on – and you could bring in this quarantine aspect or – new system, whatever it is. What are your thoughts on Brady and the Buccaneers, Rivers with the Colts, Bridgewater with the Panthers? By the way, I will come out and say I'm not a believer in Tyrod. I can't believe that Anthony Lynn is. I think it's a smoke screen. because that Tyrod we saw 2 years ago in Buffalo wasn't very good. It still went to the playoffs. You're right.
Yeah.
Of course, he's people that don't know this. He's like most teenage sons. Anytime he can either literally or figuratively hit his dad in the groin, he's going to take every opportunity. But you'll find that. You'll have a teenager here in a few weeks. But let's start with Brady. What are your thoughts on Brady with the Bucs?
Well, I think you have to like it as really an upgrade for Brady, just with those weapons that he'll have in Tampa Bay. And you think back, and of course he's had some great options in New England, but it's really been a while. I mean, Gronk wasn't really right. Gronk wasn't really himself for the last year or two of his career, and now he's been gone for a year. Edelman has been slowed in recent years, and it's been quite a while since he had Randy Moss to throw the ball to, or Wes Welker. So, I mean, he's never had wide receivers like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin at the same time, and as great and as many good things as we can say about the Patriots, their offensive system has never been one that's really been exciting. Again, since those Randy Moss years.
Right.
So I'm excited to see Brady in that offense. I'm still hesitant to invest in him in fantasy, especially in Dynasty. I mean, we all know it's kind of a 1-year rental at this point. I'm kind of more worried about how he's going to impact the receivers because, I mean, personally, I have a lot of Mike Evans on my teams. I've got Chris Godwin on my teams. And thinking about certainly nobody would argue Jameis Winston is a better quarterback than Tom Brady by any measure, except fantasy football. Just launching passes down the field, seemingly not caring about the result as far as turnovers or anything else. That was great for Evans and Godwin and that offense from a fantasy football, from a stats perspective, and Brady is not going to throw those YOLO balls.
Like the 40-year-old playing pickup basketball, crossing half court and launching it and coming back and saying, "Hey, wife, I hit 10 threes today," and the teammates. But so I have a couple of thoughts on Brady, though. One thing I'm concerned about is he goes from the stinking AFC East, where you Dolphins twice, Jets twice. Now you get the Saints. You get the Falcons, the Panthers twice, and the young lad here, it looks like he has something to say. What do you want to chime in here, buddy? About Brady and his schedule.
Well, Brady also has to play the Chiefs, the Broncos, the Chargers, the Raiders, plus the NFC West, which has 4 loaded teams, and the Rams. Right,
the Rams are in the NFC West. So he has the AFC West, the NFC West, and the NFC South twice. So that's what 8 and 6 games. That's 14 of his games.
Yeah. Then you gotta split them. Otherwise.
Yeah, that's gonna be hard for him to do well, right? What do you think they do at running back, Ryan?
Oh well, certainly they're going to bring in one of these rookies.
Not Ronald Jones the second.
I don't think so. I don't think anybody's really counting on that at this point. Maybe he is, but. No, I certainly think he'll be replaced or at least get some competition. I mean, they let, as they probably should have, they let Peyton Barber walk, and they really don't even have a backup if they were to stick with Jones. So they will add a rookie, and I would think a day 1 or I should say a day 2 rookie.
Yep. I also think that I don't know. I guess I like Brady. I just don't think. I think his numbers will be possibly similar to where it was in New England, all things considered. But I also worry, like you do, for Evans and Godwin. You have some dad there, young lad?
I worry about his ADP.
Yeah, what is it?
I don't know, but he's like quarterback 8 coming off the board, so I do not like
on redrafts. On redraft leagues, that is a little rich. How about Rivers? Do you like Rivers in Indy?
No.
Me either.
I really don't know how anybody could. Talked about Brady getting the upgrade in weapons. Rivers has taken a downgrade. I mean, he had that stacked Chargers team with Allen and Eckler and Gordon and Henry and Williams, and now there's questions at tight end in Indy. There's questions at running back. T.Y. Hilton is starting to show his age, and Paris Campbell through 1 year looks like a bust. I still have some hopes for him, but not off to a good start. So that I would think would add a receiver in the draft coming up next week as well. But as bad as Rivers looked last year in that, what should have been a friendly offense, a good situation, I can't imagine it being much better with Indy.
I saw a stat, and I think it was Rebar that put it out there. Okay, this blew my mind, and I asked Reese to name which team it was, and I'm already telling you it's the Chargers. Which team had the lowest amount of touchdowns thrown to the receivers? And it was 8. And because 6 went to Allen, 2 went to Big Mike Williams, right? And did you see that on Twitter? And I was just shocked. So I was quizzing him because he's a big trivia guy. And he was down like 20, naming off 20, 25 teams because you think it couldn't be Rivers.
Right.
I know that you're a UK guy, not a UL guy, right?
That's right.
But you still have a little bit of love for Teddy, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I think he just landed in a great spot. With the weapons they have there, obviously we all know about them, DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey, Curtis Samuel. They add Robbie Anderson. I like Ian Thomas there. And then the biggest acquisition of all is probably Joe Brady coming over from LSU. So Brady was with the Saints a couple of years ago when Teddy was as well. So, I mean, we're not going to suddenly – I don't think we're going to suddenly see him turn into a big downfield passer. But I think Brady can make the most of Bridgewater's skills, and I'm excited about him from a fantasy perspective.
I think he's a solid QB 15 to 20 range in production. Does that sound right to you?
Yes.
And also, when you mentioned the Colts, I was surprised they didn't bring in Perriman or one of those cheap guys. Like Perriman wasn't that expensive. He would have been great on that offense. I didn't get it. Or Sanders. I have to love the Emmanuel Sanders uptick this year. Mm-hmm. Don't you?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It took a little while. He was kind of that second wave of free agency, but he has to be, just from a fantasy perspective, one of the biggest winners of that free agency period. But I agree with Indy. They took the shot last year. They signed Devin Funchess. They overpaid Devin Funchess. They draft Paris Campbell. Neither of those really worked out. They're still left throwing to Zach Pascal and guys I can't even remember their name at this point.
Wasn't it Rodgers? Who's the number 10? Huh?
Mari?
No, they have anyway.
Yeah.
But I think I agree with you on Joe Brady, because we think about this. If we had a Devy auction that included Devy and rookies, you and I, and we're divvying up, I would say, especially in Superflex, 5 out of the top 15 would be LSU players.
Yeah.
Jamar Chase, Jefferson, Burrow. All right. CEH, Burrow, the 2 receivers, maybe Moss, and they have some others, but at least there's 4, right?
Yeah.
And, I was just thinking those guys weren't on the radar a year ago.
Yeah, not really even at all. I mean, those were names we knew. Burrow had taken that job the previous year and had a solid year. Chase entered school as a big time recruit, but had a pretty quiet freshman season. And I had this conversation with Ray Garvin recently on Blueprint. If you back up a year ago and think about our Devy leagues, Jeff, that you and I play in, the top valued LSU Devy player was probably John Emery, who was the incoming running back.
Or Terrace Marshall.
Yeah. Either way, it
I
wasn't
know, but
great.
you know what I mean. I have some memory shares, and luckily I avoided Terrace Marshall. But you're right.
Yeah. So I think there's some legit concern over how much of that 2019 offense is just Joe Brady magic.
Yeah. Which Teddy, right? I mean, if you believe Joe Brady Rule magic, which I do, because I looked at what Rule did at Temple that got him the job at Baylor, and you look at the job at Baylor that got him the Carolina job. He had to do some kind of magic.
Right.
Baylor.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not saying Baylor's good. I'm a Big 12 kind of guy, and they're the only, them and TCU are the private schools. It's more difficult for them, and to pull some of the recruits that Baylor's pulled. We look at the receivers and RG3, and Rule wasn't there for all of that, but they don't have the history that some of the other schools do.
Yeah,
give or take, right? They did have a string of receivers with Gordon and RG3 and all those guys. But all right, let's dive into the rookie class. What rookies are you banging the table for? It doesn't have to be a high-end guy, but who do you feel confident in?
Well, in a lot of ways, there's many of them because this class is so deep and so exciting. But trying to look a little bit deeper, Brian Edwards is one I would say I'm pretty confident in, given his expected draft position, his current ADP. He's like a mid-second rounder in our DLF rookie mocks right now. I would be glad to take him there all day. I hope he gets that draft capital, which could be tough with the injury and just the timing, obviously, of the quarantine and shutting down workouts and medical checks and things like that. But there was a tweet recently that he had undergone some type of check on the foot and it was looking good. So I would love to see him sneak into the third round. We'll see what happens, but he's a player I would be targeting. Yeah,
he's one, and I guess there's several in that range that I'm torn on. Now, I will tell you that I watched a recent Twitch with you and some others, and I heard the Chenault talk, and he's a guy that I prefer others in that tier. And not even the T. Higgins, but, the Pittmans. I think Pittman doing what he did in all the chaos that's been USC needs more applause. I get the Brian Edwards breakout. He did it at 17 years old with Jake Bentley as his quarterback. Jake Bentley and him, Jake Bentley skipped his senior year in high school and went into the NFL, to SEC. And anyway, who else do you feel confident in? Anybody else?
I like the Pittman call, and I can't believe he's so far down our ADP right now. 21 overall. He feels like a player that is just a lot to move up. In fact, I did a recent mock draft at DLF based on Dane Brugler's mock draft. So Dane did a 7-rounder for the Athletic. I took that and basically said, if this is what happens, if this is where players are drafted, how might a rookie draft go? And I got through the top 11. I was doing the first round, got through the top 11 and got to 12 and looked at T. Higgins, and he fell to the third round, which I think is reasonable in the NFL. He's had kind of a rough offseason, a rough pre-draft time. So looked at T. Higgins, looked at Chenault, looked at some of these other guys that you might see in that range right now, and they all had something going against them, landing spot or draft capital, whatever it may be. And there was Michael Pittman as kind of that early to mid-second rounder. And I can't remember right offhand where Dane had him mocked, but it was a good situation. And that's who I put at 12. And I don't think that's crazy that really this time next week or, in a little over a week from now, we look at Pittman and think he's worth a late first-round rookie pick.
He looks like Alshon to me.
I saw somebody make the Michael Thomas comp the other day. And
I'm not going that far.
that's a tough one just because we know what Thomas is. But Thomas entered the league with that possession receiver label. You know, he's not the fastest guy. He's not, you know, he's not out there juking players out of their shoes or anything. He kind of is what he is, and he had limited production. Never had over 800 receiving yards in college. And there were a lot of questions about Michael Thomas, Jeff. You remember that. In fact, he entered the league with another guy named Mike Thomas, and that was the joke. Good Mike Thomas and bad. Right. And people thought the Saints, Michael Thomas was the bad Mike Thomas. It seems wild now. But thinking about Pittman, he had the late breakout. Thomas did enter the NFL after his junior year, which I really would have loved to seen Pittman in last year's class. Yeah. I do think there's been a lot of work done on it at different sites. I think Rich Rebar did some for Sharp Football. I know Addison Hayes has done some work on this for us at DLF. But I think there is a real concern about these guys that are staying all 4 years, that wait until after their senior year to come into the NFL. And it's actually becoming pretty rare that those players make an impact.
Yeah, I'm with you there. The only thing I look at on Pittman is coaching change after his sophomore year. He has a good year with JT Daniels, thinks, hey, we're on a roll, goes back, for his junior year, comes back senior, Daniels gets hurt, all those. But, the whole analytics versus tape guy conversation is funny to me. It's interesting.
Which one are you, analytics or tapes?
I don't really think I'm either one, honestly. I feel like I'm kind of stuck in the middle. I'm certainly not a guy who watches every game, goes back and watches old games. That's not me. I'm not a scout. I can watch games and be impressed by players and pick out things that they're doing well, but I can't go into any deep analysis about a player's game or talk about their traits. That's just not me. I just don't have that skill and don't really pretend to. So I guess if I had to pick one or the other, I would pick the analytics, the metrics end of things, but I'm a believer in utilizing both of those.
I do too. And there's certain things that are trait-wise that I see. Like I remember watching Tua in one of those high school All-American games, and I talked to you afterwards. I don't know if you remember. And I was like, he's going to be on my Debbie leagues.
Yep.
All of them. And because you just see the way a guy spins it, and he's like, he spins it so good for a high schooler. But I also think on the analytics side that the league is changing so fast. And how long has it been that we went away from running backs? 5 years in the NFL?
Yeah.
That the analytics sometimes doesn't have as big of a sample size, enough confidence that they wish they did. That they're, what I'm saying? That they're saying with 100% confidence, where I really think you really have a 62% confidence.
Right. And then, you have situations like the Sashi Brown deal with the Browns where, or Chip Kelly, where they're just like people give them credit for changing the league before they really change anything.
Right.
And then when things don't go well, when the Eagles lose, when the Browns lose, it's easy to say, well, that didn't work. Let's go back to the old ways and let's not give that a chance at all. When in reality, nothing's going to work every time or all the time. And Sashi did build a pretty nice squad there. So we'll see if they can put it all together. But I feel like he did his job.
Yeah, I just meant, bear with me this, okay? Since we've had the league rule changes in the NFL, how many first round receivers, how big is that sample? It's not very big for us to be locking in fancy. And then we still have the John Rosses and the failure, the draft capital. All I meant, though, is the league's changing fast. It's hard for us to have enough big enough sample to be all in and say, hey, if this guy succeeds, like the Ruggs conversation, I'll ask you here in a minute. Well, it's got to be because he's an outlier. I'm like, no, it could be just because he's good. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
just because he doesn't tick out every box, that's cool. I mean, you know, my dad used to say that it's why the ice cream stores have so many flavors. It's because everybody likes different kinds. And I feel the same way in the fantasy community. You know what I mean? Like, we all don't have to like chocolate.
Yeah.
Even though you're a chocolate ice cream guy, aren't you?
I am. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right. Let's talk rookie quarterbacks. Are you sold on Burrow? We talked about a little bit about Joe Brady.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to be sold on him when you watch him. I mean, again, he had basically arguably the greatest college quarterback season of all time, right? But like I said, in the back of my mind, I do think there's a little something to the Joe Brady effect. And he's delivered the Heisman winner, the 101 NFL draft pick from a guy who was just a guy this time last year. He's turned Jamar Chase into the number one Devy prospect, the number one Devy player in college. He's made Clyde Edwards-Helaire a second rounder, probably, right?
Talk about late breakout, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. And
he and Van Jefferson are the two guys that you're like, whoa, I don't mind the seniors, but a 24-year-old anyway.
Yeah. So I think there's a little something to it, but it's also this time of year, right? We're overanalyzing everything. It seems like the tide is kind of turning against Tua right now, and it's trying to decide is that overanalysis or is there really something to it? Do teams have him off the board? Is he going to be the quarterback 3 or maybe even later? We just don't know yet. I kind of feel like I'm more sold on Tua than Burrow from a skill perspective, though.
You know what you have a bigger sample. Yeah, once again, I'm talking samples, right? You've seen him play, you know, a lot of good games. The other thing about Burrow is, you know, as I was giving Pittman a little bit of a pass for the stuff in USC turnover, kind of like the Josh Rosen, right? I mean, none of us doubt Josh Rosen's talent. We just haven't ever seen him in any continuity. We haven't seen him develop. Some on him, some on coaches. You know, Cincinnati's 4th best team in that division, right? I mean, anybody argue that? And then what happens when Zach Taylor's gone? Then, you know, now Burrow's going to year 2 with another coaching staff after missing most of the offseason because of this COVID stuff this offseason. I mean, who's he really brought about in that same Joe Brady way? On Tua, I have this theory, and I want Reese and you to keep me honest here. I see all this talk of trading up with the Lions. You see Bob Quinn going, hey, we're getting a lot of calls. Oh, yeah, you better be the next one to call us because this is going fast. No. I really mean it this time. You know, that kind of stuff, right? But I think, maybe I'm wrong, recently we were having this conversation, who besides the Chargers and Dolphins are in that quarterback mix in the top 6 or 7 picks? I mean, who is there to trade up? I mean, people are talking about the Patriots. That's a long way up, you know? And what'd you say?
Gotta get a lot.
A lot. Yeah, give up a lot. And so, you know what I'm saying? Like, if the Chargers jump to 3, why would Miami feel like they have to move to 4 for whichever other quarterback? Do you disagree with that?
No, I don't. I think there's a lot of teams who might have questions and could certainly be interested in Tua or Herbert, but like you said, they're just too far down. I mean, I guess the Raiders are the ones that make a little bit of sense just because they still have. I think they still have a good collection of picks. Maybe they have a little ammo. They're closer to that range than the Patriots or some of the other teams. but overall, yeah, I think it could just be tough and tough for teams to move up. And then there's also a question of how much do teams like Jordan Love? So if it's a matter of we can give up the farm to trade up to 3 or 4 and get one of these guys, or we can stay here and take Jordan Love, then that becomes an option that they have to consider.
Yeah, Jacksonville is the only one I could think of because I don't think Carolina. Reese brought up the point. They wouldn't give Teddy all that money. And the one thing I am sold on, and ask Reese his opinion, but whichever quarterback, Tua or Herbert, goes to the Chargers, I will probably like their short-term fantasy outlook better than the Dolphins
Or the Bengals for that one.
or the Bengals. If Tua goes to the Chargers, he's a startable super flex quarterback, right?
Right out the gate.
Yeah, I think so. And again, just with him, it's going to come down to health.
Right. I just meant him or Herbert. Whoever goes to the Chargers is a startable quarterback right out of the gate.
Yeah, yep, I would agree. And we talked about Rivers' weapons that he's left behind earlier. So, yeah, I think that makes sense.
Do the Chargers draft a running back in this draft?
They probably should, yeah. I would think so. Although I do still like Justin Jackson, so we'll see. We'll see how they want to use him. I think it'll be interesting to see how confident they are with those two. There's a few teams like that have. I mean, the Rams are another. How happy are they with Darrell Henderson and Malcolm Brown? Both of those guys, they clearly like some, but are they ready to hand them the job, or maybe use them as a committee?
Or sign Devontae Freeman or somebody like that, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I was thinking, when I see the yards per rush average in the Rams, they're all sub 4, and none of them did well, and you just don't know. Getting back to quarterback, do you have any strong takes on Tua, Herbert, Love, Burrow?
I do not like Burrow.
Say it with a little more confidence, please.
Wow.
Why not?
I think he was a system quarterback, sort of like how I think Tom Brady was a little bit of one.
Oh, come on now. You're just a Bronco fan.
That too. But I also think the Bengals should draft Chase Young and then sign Cam Newton. I think that would be the smarter move.
You'd trade back if you're going to do that, though.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I was saying you might want to get Chase Young.
I understand, but you'd trade back. Right? Are you a Jordan Love guy, Ryan? See, I'm not. I am not. And I have him in one league. It's one of the kitchen sinks. And I was trying to pawn him off on one of a mutual friend of you and I's. I'm not going to say who.
Yeah.
I would only buy him to trade him, so I'd have to buy him less than what I think I could pawn him off on someone else. And I just don't. You mentioned the Raiders and quarterback. They gave Mariota a lot of money for a backup. The only reason they would draft somebody like Hurts or Love or somebody like that, you're investing a lot in a third quarterback. Now you have 3 quarterbacks that you're paying. Because Carr's still getting paid okay.
Oh, yeah.
So, that's the kind of thought I still wonder what else is going to happen. He does bring up a good point with Cam and Jameis out there still. I'd like to see Cam in Jacksonville for a 1-year deal, but that's a different story. All right, let's move on. As we move to receivers, any destinations that you like or not for the rookies?
Yeah, there's a lot. We see the Packers projected to take a wide receiver late in the first round. That last year they tried, I guess, the committee approach at wide receiver 2. They had a lot of options, and fantasy players spent all off season arguing if it was going to be Geronimo Allison or MVS or maybe Jake Kumaro or whoever. And really the answer ended up being none of those guys. They all kind of stunk in 2019, and it was basically Devontae Adams out there by himself. Jimmy Graham didn't have such a great season himself. So that's kind of an exciting spot, certainly an exciting spot for a wide receiver 2 candidate. And it feels like almost every single mock draft I look at has them taking one of these guys late in the first round. Brandon Ayuk has been kind of a popular player landing there. So whoever is the Packers' rookie wide receiver is one I would be interested in. We know the Eagles have to add a wide receiver. That's another one that we see as a popular mock landing spot in the first round. The Vikings, after they move on from Stephon Diggs, have a pretty clear opening. I think Tajay Sharp is the starter right now. That's not going to work very well. So I would think they would invest in, if not the first round, then day 2 at least.
How about you?
I'd say Baltimore with Lamar Jackson, because I don't think Marquise Brown is a long-term, durable fantasy player.
He might be a receiver 2, but maybe not a receiver 1. Is that kind of your point? How about who else?
San Francisco is another one I like.
I also like the Raiders. I mean, like if any team needs a receiver 1, needs CeeDee Lamb or Judy, it has to be the Raiders, right?
But do you trust the quarterback play there?
I trust Carr. I mean, I think Carr's been better than he's been kicked. I'll say that. I'm not saying he's great. I'm just saying that he's a dog that's been kicked a lot of years. You're just an embittered orange wearing fan. And so I'm just saying that Carr has gone through a lot of turmoil, a lot of change in offense. They thought they had their receiver 1 in Antonio Brown this time last year. And am I wrong? Am I wrong on any of this? And so you have Tyrell Williams as your receiver 1, and you have Darren Waller. You have really nothing at receiver 2, Zay Jones and some others, right?
Hunter Renfrow. And I'm just saying it's miraculous that they won as many games they did. They could use an alpha, and I would probably be buying in that situation. I mean, them almost as much as any other team. And I don't think, for as much junk as Carr gets, I'm not so sure he's played that much worse than, let's say, Carson Wentz or Kirk Cousins, who's also Do you think Carr's that much worse than Wentz? Well, I mean, it wasn't that long ago we were looking at Derek Carr as an MVP candidate, right? What was that, 2015, 2016? Yep. I think the other team that could look wide receiver, probably should look wide receiver, is the Broncos.
Yes.
I don't know if that's a wide receiver I'm going to want on my fantasy team, but I think it would be – it might be a fun offense to watch, but you might always be guessing with who's going to have the big game there.
Right. And the other one that we would all think should but probably won't is the Texans. When I see that they are looking to get rid of Stills and Kiki Kute, I'm like, they don't really have a lot of depth there, and I just can't see that, and I don't know. I will say that I on the topic of receivers, I kind of believe that some of that Odell Beckham rumor is somewhat true. Maybe not to the Vikings, but the Browns, Stefanski came from Minnesota. They said it's false, but they didn't say, no, we've never had those conversations. It's kind of like, that trade that you just told me was going to happen, I say that's false. But it doesn't mean those parameters might still be different, Anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I always kind of think once it gets to the point of we're hearing a rumor, there's something to it. I mean, it's not like somebody just made that up. I don't think that's rarely the case. I will say, right. Like there's it doesn't mean it always happens, but there's always a little truth to it. And I mean, we've seen Odell wear out his welcome in other places, so that part wouldn't be the most shocking thing. And when that report was kind of going around for a day or for half a day, there was a lot of complaining or questioning. That's all they can get, I think it was a second and a fifth maybe. And that's the price for Odell. that seemed like a pretty reasonable price for me. If the Browns were to trade him, I don't think they would get a first rounder. A second and a fifth really seems like best case to me.
Yeah, because he's what, 2 or 3 years older than Diggs?
Diggs came out in 2015. OBJ came out in 2014.
But I think they were both older in their careers. Are you a Ruggs fan? I'll jump right on that one since I think Ruggs is going to Denver. Are you a Ruggs fan for fantasy?
I don't really think Ruggs will last that far, actually. I think he would be a fun fit in Denver. That would definitely make them that offense that you want to watch, especially with so many young talented players. I don't consider myself a Ruggs fan necessarily. I do worry a little bit about the no breakout age and kind of being the third or fourth best receiver on that team. But then when you think about that group of receivers they had last year, and he and Jerry Jeudy and Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith, and people make the argument, well, he's going to play with NFL caliber receivers, obviously, on Sundays. But I think depending on I'll say this: there's not a lot of teams that have 4 wide receivers like that on their roster.
Right.
4 wide receivers. We know Ruggs is going to be a first-round pick. We know Judy's going to be a first-round pick. And Waddle and Smith both certainly have a chance to be next year. I would think at the very worst they're second-rounders. So, how many NFL teams have 2 first-rounders and 2 second-rounders on their depth chart? Probably none, I would guess. Not very many, at least.
Yeah.
So there's a decent chance that his NFL depth chart is weaker than his college depth chart.
And the other side on that is when he was a freshman, who were the starting wide receivers in Alabama? They were really good, right?
Yeah, was that Ridley?
Yeah, it was Ridley and that crew, I think. And all I meant, though, is this is where I was getting earlier with that. That's still small. We have so many one-offs. It's hard to say things definitively.
Yeah.
I'm probably more of a Ruggs guy in the can he be Deshaun Jackson? Can he be Deshaun Jackson was a game changer before he had all those injuries. Can he be one of the guys in that kind of mold? That's where I fall, is that he may be a 50 catch, 1,000 yard, 8 touchdown guy.
So pretty good.
Yeah, I think so. And players like him with that frame, with that skill set, are often just kind of I won't say dismissed, but I guess categorized as best ball targets, right?
Right.
Hit or miss each week, up and down, and really that's Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill, I think, is kind of in that same mold as well, but has been more consistent even with limited targets.
But that's because of the offense. See, like so much that we as fantasy players have to consider is situation. The Andy Reid offense for Mahomes is so much different than Burrow at Zach Taylor. Like we're comparing apples to figs or acorns. It's just hard to compare. One question for you. If you're not really sold on Ruggs, are you sold on Rager? And why him more than Ruggs?
Yeah, I would say a little bit more. Beyond the speed, I don't think they have identical games. I feel like Rager's a little more well-rounded, I guess. He certainly has shown the production that he can carry and be the top option for his team, where Ruggs did not show that. And again, we're talking about very different situations, even though they're both coming from Power 5 schools.
Yeah, I was just given size and, that sort of thing.
Right.
If we knock one, we knock both is all I was getting at. All right, let's move to late round rookie receivers. I have 4 that I have on my list that I'm targeting. And I'll read them to you, and you see if you have these or different. Isaiah Coulter, Cephas, Quintez Cephas, James Prochet, even though those guys, it hasn't been kind. Like everybody gets worked up over the Trent Taylors of the world or Hunter Renfro's. The NFL has not been kind to the slow slot receiver coming out because he's so destination dependent. And one guy I like, NFL.com has him as their number 49 rookie receiver, which is way down there, right?
Wow.
Is Jeff Thomas. And only because I'd rather bet on a talented guy that's been in trouble. He mentioned Tyreek Hill. Than I would somebody that's not talented that's been a choir boy. Kind of like my athletic career. But, those guys that are – Jeff Thomas, when he came out, he was like a big name in the Devy community because he was so fast. And him and was there a guy named Guidry and some of those guys.
Yeah.
But those are kind of the guys – like Thomas may not get drafted, right? There's a legit chance.
Mm-hmm.
But he still has a good chance to hit a roster, be on a roster. Who are you looking at?
I like the Cephas call for sure. And the combine was kind of a rough one for him. He ran terribly slow. I think he ran a 4.71 or 4.73. And I got to go to the combine this year, and there was talk, just kind of people you hear about just how disappointing that was, and how he's falling down the boards because of that. And the next day, I'm walking around. They're doing some interviews with defensive backs, and I walk over to Jeff Okudah's table, of course, from Ohio State, and projected by a lot of people to be the number 3 overall pick. We'll see what happens there. But a reporter there asked Okudah who was the toughest wide receiver that he covered in college, and he said Quintez Cephas. And I, of course, that obviously really stuck with me. And you value the opinions of these players, especially the top players. So kind of really that alone keeps sticking in my head and makes me think that Cephas might be worth a late dart throw in rookie drafts. The other one that I would say right now that's looking like a 4th rounder, actually he's the last pick in the 4th round according to our current ADP, is Gabriel Davis.
He's on my list too.
Yeah, he's another player I'm kind of intrigued with. A bigger guy, 6'1" or 6'2", well over 200 pounds, and he's a guy that I don't know if we know anything right this year, just because of how different this whole process has been. And we've seen people say that this is going to be the most unpredictable draft because of the limited information, the no pro days and no visits and no medical checks and all these things that go into the process. So who knows anything right now? But Gabriel Davis is a guy who is showing up on 2nd or 3rd round of a lot of mock drafts. And if he goes on day 2, there's no way he's lasting to the late 4th round.
Or even the late 2nd, probably, because day two wide receivers have enough capital. Let me run through some other names for you. Isaiah Hodgins.
I'm taking a shot in the 3rd round. I worry if he even gets drafted, though.
That's my thought. So these next ones are bigger names, but they were huge names this time last year, not as much this year.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Tyler Johnson.
Yeah, are we going the Johnson and Johnson?
Oh, I got them. I got those. I got Johnson, Jones, and Hightower.
Okay.
So let's go. Tyler Johnson. What are your thoughts?
Like everybody else, I love the skills. I love what we saw on the field. We're missing something with this guy, right? Everybody thought he should have gone pro a year ago. He didn't. Came back and he had a good senior season. He was productive again. Minnesota had a great season, and now doesn't get the Senior Bowl invite. And you, like I said, it just feels like there's something we're missing. There's something that is not out there in the public that teams don't like about this guy. And thinking back on last year, he dominated his bowl game, and you think that he's going to make the leap, and now my guess would be he probably got a negative report as far as where he might be drafted. And now that we kind of know a little bit more this year, I think he's a day 3 prospect at best, and day 3 receivers are usually avoids for me.
Yep. Because look at even Hakeem Butler, who's the first pick of the 3rd day last year. Yep. And, I think of Bateman outplayed him by a lot last year,
Oh, yeah.
At Minnesota. And so that's kind of where I was going to, did it help him or hurt him coming back in his draft stock? Neither, right? I mean, he probably would have been in the same lot. Colin Johnson, I was higher on last year just because of his physical abilities. Yeah. But he seems more of an athlete to me than a receiver.
Yeah, and that's the fear. I mean, he's a big boy, right? Like I think he's 6'5" or 6'6", and I think if you've been playing fantasy and dynasty for a while, that kind of excites you because you think back to Calvin Johnson and even guys like Hakeem Nicks, and you think
Marcus Colton.
Yeah, right. You think all these receivers that are 6'5" and 230 are going to turn into that, and really those guys are few and far between. And honestly, the receivers that are that big haven't had as much success the past 2 or 3 years coming into the league.
Right. And I was saying, what was it? Was it Marquez? What's the name of the Saints?
Colston.
Oh, Colston, yeah.
Marcus Colston, yeah.
Came out of Rutgers or wherever it was. Did you watch any Texas games this year? Him and Duvernay?
I watched Red River Rivalry and LSU.
Did you like either?
He was okay. He was able to out-jump Fulton for some jump balls. But I think that had more to do with size and a little bit of a push-off.
Maybe. How about so Donovan Peoples-Jones? He's probably a 3rd or 4th round NFL pick, right? I mean, I doubt he sneaks up to the 2nd, even with the great combine. Lack of production. Think about the analytics conversation, right? The analytics conversation. We can't say, okay. Same with Mims. We can't now say, okay, now we like this guy because he ran fast. You know what I'm saying? That's all I was getting at earlier.
Yeah, I mean, Peoples-Jones just never really did it, right? I mean, he went into college as I think he was the number 1 wide receiver recruit in his class, 1 or 2, and just never gave us the production. So, I mean, he probably will be a 3rd or 4th rounder. I kind of think that's a wasted pick, and he's another guy that I doubt I will be drafting. We'll see. He's kind of got that. If you're a big college football fan, he kind of has that name value right now. But I'll be avoiding him. I hope other people fall for that trap.
Yeah, me too. How about Hightower? Last one in my little group.
Yeah, I'm kind of intrigued by him. I mean, you talked about older guys. He's an old guy. I think he's 24. Yeah. Well, I mean that's kind of a good reminder, though. We brush these guys off completely because of that, and then when they get into the league and they have some success, like all is forgiven. We just don't even think about that anymore. So that's a good little reminder. But Hightower's kind of intriguing. It's going to be draft capital for him as well. I wonder if he'll sneak into day 2 at all. I think that would be a little bit of an upset. I've seen him mocked there a few times, and in the late 3rd round. And it was another point Jeremiah made that the small school guys could really be hurt in this draft process because there's regional combines typically where they can scouts and coaches, GMs can knock out several schools with one stop.
Right.
And of course we know those didn't happen this year. So the John Hightowers of the world could be hurt by that.
Right. But I also think that the separation has also given us less rumors. And so there's more that's just garbage made up because it's kind of like an office environment. People talk, right? Tongues wag. Secretary now calls her friend, says, guess what I heard? Now it's on it's on Twitter. And so I think that there's some of that that's going on. I appreciate this conversation. I just have a few more. I was rounding on. Let's move to veterans. I really enjoyed the rookie receiver. I will say that I think when we look back, there will be fewer day one, day two receivers taken than most expect. Even though it's a phenomenal class, not every team needs enough receivers to spend the top 100 pickup. Let me say it that way, right?
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that.
All right, but let me go backwards on this. I'll say half the teams will not spend a top 100 pick. And some of these mocks have 18 up to 18 players in that. And I'm saying if the number's a dozen, 13, that seems reasonable. 16, 17, 18,
right.
There's enough teams with a lot of needs that receivers just not going to be it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, early on we heard, I think it was Kuiper that spit out the number 30, right? Like 30 receivers drafted in the top 100. And at first you hear that and you kind of get excited if you're a dynasty player. Like, we're getting 30 day one or day two caliber wide receivers. That's great. And then like reality sets in and you think, I think the most that have ever been drafted in the top 100 was like 17 or 18, right. Something like that. And you just realize that's a crazy number that's not going to happen. I mean, in reality, when you look at kind of the wide receiver numbers, and if we're just looking at ADP, it's hard to see really more than 16 or 17 maybe in that range. And for some of those, that might be a stretch, or Devin Duvernay could sneak into the top 100, guys like that.
I'll take the under. Just because I think I can name 16 teams that won't take one. So now you're betting on some team doubling up. You know what I mean? And I would take the under on that. Anyway, moving on to veterans. I got a great question for you. Fantasy. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Which former Bama running back do you like to have the best year this year?
Oh, wow. I feel like I'm going to forget one.
So we got Drake, we got Henry, we have.
Yeah, Henry is who I was thinking of. I'll take Henry over Jacobs. Drake is a fun one too, and then I don't guess I can say Damian Harris. I still I've got some Damian Harris love. We'll see if he can get going. I think Henry. I really think we just see a repeat of that Titans offense, and I'm not sure many teams can stop that. So I still feel like they're just going to pound the ball. Henry's not going to catch a ton of passes, but neither is Jacobs. So if you're talking fantasy production, I'll take Henry. Drake's kind of the wild card, though, for sure.
Yeah, Drake, I have reservations. I'll pitch it to him. I think Reese has the opposite side of the Drake coin, but he never had over, 150, 160 carries in Miami. 8 games. Arizona gives him 133 after an injury. I don't want to say riddled, but a very injury-plagued college career because, he wasn't really healthy a lot in Bama. What do you think of those 3 young lads?
Definitely like Henry the most, but don't count out Drake. He's getting a lot of workforce production, which he got last year.
Yeah.
But he got that last year with David Johnson still getting touches.
So, but do you think he gets enough and can stay healthy?
He can stay healthy if Kyler Murray can stay healthy.
Yeah, I like Kyler Murray. It's hard for me, Ryan, that maybe I'm wrong on this, but, Kyler Murray was another older breakout. Same with Mahomes, same with Mayfield. But I don't think you can name 5 dynasty quarterbacks, your top 5, and leave Murray out, right?
No.
Oh, no. I don't think you can name your top 3 and leave him out. I'm doing a dynasty startup right now with a lot of sharp people, and I moved up, and it's a super flex league. I moved up and took him in the first round as the quarterback 3.
I'm not sharp enough to be in that league, I know, but
come on in.
No, it's all right.
So on the flip side of that Alabama question, what about the Georgia running back? Who's you got the best for this year?
Who do you think has the best year of the Georgia ones? You can throw Swift in there.
Yeah. I'm thinking about Swift, and I don't know. A lot of those guys have, it's been a little bit of disappointment with Sony Michel, and I mean, we'll see what happens with Swift. Gurley's obviously kind of on the back nine of his career.
How about Chubber?
Yeah, I guess it would probably have to be Nick Chubb, kind of by default. I mean, I do think Gurley has a good year in Atlanta. I think that's a perfect spot for him. It's like we were talking about before. It's just a matter of staying healthy for him.
What do you think, young lad?
Definitely Chubb, because I'm not worried about Hunt. Stefanski is used to having two top receivers, and a workhorse running back, and the other running back to help, I guess. And he still made that Minnesota offense very productive. So they ran the ball almost 50% of the time.
In Minnesota?
Yeah.
That's why Diggs was unhappy, but that's a different story.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little more hesitant than he is. I appreciate him looking this stuff up and us having these good family discussions. Not that I love Hunt. I just think that, I saw as a Chubb owner in one league, I just saw his numbers go down as what?
That's why you lost that championship.
That's why I lost, because I had him in the championship that I lost to the young lad. That's a different story. All right. Couple others. Are you sold on Damian Williams? Do you think if it's yes or no, do you think KC drafts a running back?
I'm not really sold on Damian Williams. I mean, I think what we've seen the past 2 years is kind of what he is, hit and miss, and a guy that's going to be tough to count on throughout the whole season. I do still think that they draft a running back. I know they signed DeAndre Washington recently, which I kind of like. I mean, if we're talking about finding a guy from the waiver wire, that's not a bad one to take a chance on.
Especially when he played college football with your quarterback.
That's right. But, yeah, I mean, I do still think they will take a running back. I don't think it's going to be one of the big five. I think they're probably more of a day three guy, and dynasty players will probably still get excited about whoever that might be.
But one thing I thought, and this popped in my mind, is Andy Reid goes, every guy he signs is a good receiver. Even Shady McCoy was a good receiver. You know what I'm saying? Like they did that. How about David Johnson? Do you like him, and where's he in your dynasty ranks and running backs? You can just put a range. You don't have to pinpoint him.
Yeah, he's pretty far down. He's probably in the 40s, maybe a little lower. I do think he landed in a good spot. I mean, he and the Texans as a whole kind of took the hit on that trade from a PR standpoint, deservedly so for the Texans and O'Brien. But I do think that's a good spot for him to kind of rejuvenate his career a little bit, get away from Arizona and in a situation that clearly wasn't going his way at this point. So I do like him to bounce back a little bit, and he's still relatively cheap.
Very. That's why I'm intrigued. Plus, he's I think a running back short term anyway, right? I mean, none of these guys, even the Alabama and Georgia conversation, we shouldn't be going, well, 5 years from now, right? I mean, it's all what can you give me in the next 700 days, the next 2 years? What do you think of David Johnson?
He's a good running back for the next 2 years. I'm not big on long term because he was also a late bloomer. Yeah. He was 25 by his third season.
So is the Texans a good situation?
Very much so. They're a run-first team. They're on the ball 45% of the time. And they were able to make Carlos Hyde a 1,000-yard rusher.
I'm sure Carlos's mom thinks so. How about Mark Ingram? Are you buying or are you avoiding Mark Ingram?
I'll buy. Literally, I'll buy in Dynasty because his price is going down. That's what we see happen to these veterans, especially running backs this time of year. But I also think this is his last year in Baltimore. So I think if you're buying, you have to know you're probably going to be left holding the bag, and there's going to be almost no value this time next year. I mean, we look at a guy like you talked about him earlier, like Devontae Freeman. This time last year we thought he's still a fantasy starter, still a top 25 dynasty back, and now he's basically a zero now.
Yep. I would buy, though. I mean, to me, he's worth a late third rookie pick just to roll the dice because, like you say, because you're fighting over fifth-round running backs or fifth-round receivers. You like Ingram, young lad? Oh.
I do like Ingram because he's in a run-first offense. They run the ball more than they pass it by a decent margin. But there's nothing to worry about on his age for like next year or two. He still has his legs on because of limited usage at Alabama and with the Saints.
All right, last two questions for you. Well, not last two. I have one after that. But which situations do you think are safe, but they're going to be toppled? And then flip it. Which situations we think are that are safe, even though we think are going to be disruptive? And I'll give you a toss one out there. I think the Seahawks take a running back. Yeah, I think everybody's buying Chris Carson. And they're saying, hey, they invested a first rounder in Penny. I think the Seahawks, everybody thinks that Carson's safe. I don't think he is. But that Sunday after the draft, we're all like flummoxed of, I didn't see that coming. Either way, or I thought that Tampa Bay would take a running back early, and now they have, I'm making this up, A.J. Dillon in the 5th round. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is there any situations that you feel strongly one way or the other that, hey, the community's got this wrong? Either there's something safe and they don't think so, or they don't think it's safe and
Yeah, I don't think I'm alone in this one for sure, because I see them being projected to take a running back in a lot of mock drafts. Yet it hasn't really hurt the value of the veteran there. But I think the Lions take a running back.
Exactly.
Most likely in day 2. And like I said, that's out there a lot. It's not a novel concept that I came up with. Yet people are still valuing Kerryon Johnson like he's like he's a safe fantasy asset.
Right. I predicted that too. I forgot which running back. I thought Dobbins would go there. That's the one. I had a Twitter thread that I was trying to predict. Yeah. Players to location. I mean, like if my hit rate's 10%, I'm lucky, right? I mean, because it's impossible. But I also think, is Stidham safe? No, I don't. Or is how about the Jets? Is Bell and are they going to add receivers? Or what I'm saying? Like, there's so much of this that's up in the air that even Eckler, I mentioned him earlier. Is there any others that you think? How about this? Do you think that we see like Jordan Howard as, hey, they're going to bring in competition, but they really don't bring in anybody in the first 100 picks? Is there anything in there that you see?
That would be a surprise. That you mentioned the same situation with Tampa. That I guess the Tampa situation would be even more of a surprise. But I mean, Miami has just nothing after Jordan Howard, and they have so many picks. So that would be a huge surprise if they didn't come out of this draft with a running back.
But I'd say top 100 pick, because right, a 4th round running back, we shouldn't give that much juice to, should we?
We shouldn't, but I mean, that could be A.J. Dillon. That could be. I think Zach Moss is probably a top 100 pick, but he could fall. So that could be Zach Moss in round 4. And if it's one of those guys, Keyshawn Vaughn even. Now, I mean, I don't love any of those running backs. I don't even really like any of those running backs too much. But if they're early round 4 picks to Miami, they're going to see a bump in value.
Right. All I meant, though, is I was also thinking like Stidham. I was thinking, how about is Latavius in the Saints? Is he safe? Is what happens if the Rams come out of the first 100 picks because the Rams don't have a first rounder? Or is it a done deal that they're going to spend a 2nd or a 3rd on a running back? Same with the Chargers. This is my thought process: is like, who should I be buying or selling this week? Right?
Yeah.
That's your thought as well.
And that's the toughest thing to predict. One player I'm buying. This is kind of veering off a different direction. Is David Njoku. I just think I mean, he's still a young player. He's been productive. we forgive everybody else on that Browns team for a terrible year under Freddie Kitchens, and Baker Mayfield still has value, and certainly Nick Chubb and Odell and all these guys do. But David Njoku's value has basically just tanked. And obviously part of that is because of Austin Hooper. But I think, there's a path that they trade David Njoku, which would almost certainly be a good thing for him and his fantasy value.
I'll give you my counterpoint, not counterpoint. I'll give you a similar one that is even cheaper that I like more. You ready? Will Dissly. Olsen's never been healthy. Hasn't been healthy. I know Dissly hasn't either. But Dissly's what, 24 years old? Reese was running some points per game averages, and he was surprised that I picked out who tight end 7 last year was and his points per game. I just think he's going to be a waiver guy in some of our hyperactive leagues.
Yeah. Dissly is crazy if you look at his production, because he has had the injuries both years, serious injuries. So, you can't dismiss that, can't ignore that, has to factor in. But when he's been on the field, right, like he's played a dozen games combined maybe, he's been productive. He's been highly productive. Yeah, Reese said tight end 7 last year on points per game in
non-PPR.
He said non-PPR is what he was looking at. But,
yeah. So I'm trying to pull the numbers just to double check my memory here, but Dissly has been super productive. It's not just Olsen though, right? I mean, they've got they've got Hollister there who had some production last year. Here we go. So Dissly in 2 seasons has played a total of, and this is the concern, he's played a total of 9 games. 9 games total.
On the waiver wire, right? I mean, he is going to be on the waiver wire.
Right. 9 games total. One of those we won't hold against him because he went out early with the injury. So in the 8 games that he basically played full games, he was a tight end 1 in 6 of those.
Yeah.
Tight end 1. And we're talking big time fantasy points, 20 and 13, 22, 18, 19, 13 across the board. So, yeah, absolutely a great buy and a cheap buy.
If he costs you waiver money or a 4th-round rookie pick and you're kind of shallow at that position, he's one I like there. Much more than throwing something at a New England tight end or, something like that. All right, on tight ends, this is the very last question. Who are your top 5 tight ends this year?
Oh, wow. Well, certainly. I think that the top 3, whether you're playing dynasty or redraft, I think are pretty set, and I would go chalk on those with Kittle, Kelsey, and Andrews. After that, it's really wide open, which makes it fun. If we're talking 2020 production, of course, Zach Ertz has to be next on that list. Maybe even deserves to be higher. And then at 5, I guess I would say Evan Ingram, but honestly, I don't have a ton of conviction about that. It could go a lot of ways, and he's another one that I'm worried about staying healthy.
I'm surprised you didn't name Jason Witten's backup.
Oh, yeah. Well, we talked about the Raiders earlier and their wide receiver situation. I think they upgrade that. I think they take a couple of these receivers. They signed a couple. I don't think those are going to have major impact, Nelson Aguilar and guys like that. But they're certainly going to draft 1 or 2, and I think that's going to hurt Waller more than anybody, really. He was basically the top target in that offense. He was the top target in that offense last year, and had a breakout season because of it. I don't see really a path for him to repeat those numbers.
Yeah, same with Jared Cook now that they have Sanders and the Saints. One I have one, he's not really that sleeper, but I think Jarwin has a chance to sneak up there.
Yeah.
And especially without Cobb. So I think I put this out there in the prediction. I think your boy Lynn Bowden goes to the Cowboys. No, goes to the Packers. Cowboys get Antonio Gibson or somebody similar. But I really think that Jarwin has a shot, and the guy I don't like is Hurst in Atlanta. I think we're projecting too much in the fantasy community to think that he's going to be a viable fantasy tight end one. Do you think that's too far fetched? I just, I just haven't seen a pure receiving guy like he is. Like
Yeah.
he's not. I mean, Hooper is. He's not.
Right. I get the concern. I also do get the reason for, for some hope with him. He did play well late in the season once he was fully healthy and kind of in that rotation. And then you just have to love the Atlanta tight end spot. I mean, it's been a spot of production for what? More than a decade. I mean, going back to Tony Gonzalez and all of these other guys. So, and Hooper's just the latest in that line.
Yeah.
So I do like Hayden Hurst there. If you're locking him in as a tight end one, some risk with that, but I think he's got some upside.
So going back, there's one team that I think drafts a wide receiver that upsets some shares, and that's the Niners with drafting a receiver high and upsetting Debo shares a little bit. But, when we look through these tight ends, Delaney Walker's still unsigned. Jordan Reed's still unsigned. Some of that could be disruptive to the Ian Thomas, Jonnu Smith kind of stuff, right? I also don't mind Logan Thomas as a long shot, deep sleeper in Washington. You know what I'm talking about. Buffalo is all right.
Sure.
Reese, what do you think of the kind of good fantasy tight end here?
I also like Higbee because Cooks is gone. Once Cooks was out for the year, his production skyrocketed. And also, as an honorable mention, I really like Dallas Goedert this year.
Why him this year? Did you not like him last year?
I didn't do research like I did this year. But the Eagles have the second easiest tight end schedule this year. Plus, they were able to put up the second most fantasy points last year on the tight end position.
Why you said they have an easy schedule? Who do they play?
They play the Giants and Redskins twice, so you can have an easy schedule. And then also,
remember what divisions they play?
Not off the top of my head. I think it's
I have high
West.
expectations of you.
I think they play the NFC West and the AFC North or South.
Mm-hmm. Ryan, it's been great talking to you for almost 2 hours, and so it's hour and a half, hour 40. And so it's good catching up talking football. As this young lad, it's late. You can tell he's drifting a little bit. He's not used to these long meetings. It is good catching up, and especially because we have these kitchen sink auctions going on.
Right.
And Debbie starts in the next couple rookie auctions and drafts will start here in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Or will it be next week, or when are you going to start those?
Yeah, we'll fire those off next week probably. We'll get them started as quickly as we can. That's the fun part.
Oh yeah, I almost wish that they came beforehand so draft capital wasn't a big piece.
Yeah.
But then, I see both sides. Let's just say I see both sides. Well, Ryan, we appreciate you being with us, and especially the young lad now that he's gotten a little bit bigger.
That's right.
He may not be as big as his old man. We do 40-yard dash races on the beach. This was his first year to beat the old man.
Oh, nice.
So, he was happy. The whole thing is I sink in the sand just a little bit more than his 100 pounds does.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Well, have a good one, and we will talk to you later. Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for being